Hey everybody, I'm James from Warlord Games Illustrated, and in this video we're going to take a look at some of the Stahltruppen that come for free with this issue of Warlord Games Illustrated. You could also get Fireflies, but we've got a big guide for painting them in this magazine. And we thought we would paint some, but with a bit of a twist. We've got these Army Painter Speedpaint Markers, which you've probably seen used across the internet by various experienced hobby folk. We thought we'd try something a bit different, and with that in mind, I've brought in two slightly less experienced hobby folk, and let's find out why they are less experienced. Let's start with Editor Dan. Tell us about your painting of late.
Well, of late, if you mean the mid-1980s, then that was late, wasn't it? I did used to paint hundreds of figures, Citadel miniatures, Essex miniatures, Prince August, cast your own figures, but that was 40 years ago. And if practice makes perfect, I'm far from perfect because I've not done any practice. So yeah, in recent years, I've painted barely nothing. We did have a go with the speed paint pot paints, didn't we? Not too long ago, but
I think that was more like 3 years ago, actually.
Was it? Okay. Well, not too long, 3 years, something like that. I'm really not good. I'm really not good. I don't paint. I must admit, I don't. The main reason is I don't enjoy it. But maybe Speedpaint Markers will change all of that, and it will open up a whole new world for me and Charlie.
Yeah, okay. And Charlie, you're even newer to the painting.
I'm a complete amateur noob. All the words. I've recently, like a year ago, I did the War of the Roses Man at Arms. Figure I didn't do very well.
It was good. It was good.
It was all right. And I put the tanks together. But that's my entire experience with any figures of any kind. Okay,
so a good start then for these, which I do think are probably going to be better suited for slightly newer hobbyists.
Yes.
So I've built these figures and sprayed them. So these are ready to go, sprayed white so that the speed paint markers will go over them well. And we're just going to get down to some painting and then we'll report back on how we found it. So we get started with some comedic pumping of the pens. Do be careful when you're doing this because the tops can actually come quite loose. The screw nearly undid when I first shook mine. After that, you have to properly pump the nib to get your paint flowing through. There are replaceable nibs in the set as well, so that's quite good. Dan started out pretty methodically with an application of grey from his pen, taking it very carefully over the large flat surface at the front. Charlie went for something a bit bolder with red, and he started in exactly the same place, not with any discussion about that. Whereas I just started to shake the paint onto the legs, going quite fast, because I'm a bit of a speed painter really, so use the pens for what they're supposed to be. Charlie's very happy there. He kind of did an outline and then a colour in, and he did talk about how this was basically what he was into. He liked to do colouring in. I here have moved on to some orange for the head, and I'm encountering the first kind of issue, which is it's very difficult to get these quite thick tips into recessed areas. You could, of course, leave the head off, but I decided I'd immediately start experimenting and started to dip the pen into water, which did help the flow, but obviously diluted the coverage a bit. I then went further and decided, well, let's really dilute it and start to do a flood all over the back with the orange, with the intent of then layering up with another colour over the top. And here I'm using the thinned paint through the pen, but I'm actually applying it a little more selectively, trying to create a slight build of volumes just to give more depth to those front panels. Charlie here continuing with his bright application, starting to make it look like some kind of superhero. He's mixed in some blue and just generally sectioning off things a lot more logically than me. Dan decided he would try out a more universal pen, a Sharpie, and see if it did anything different. It largely covered pretty thick without that mid-tone top highlight and shadow that you get from the speed paints. Finally, here I am trying a bit of the metallic, which actually covered quite well. I was quite surprised, but on thin areas like this you do get a lot of kind of flick of the pen going against the surface, so you've got to be careful of that. And then here I'm adding some metal over the orange to get a little bit of a recessed rust kind of look, and then just splodging on some paint for the cows on the base. Doing this while the other speed paints dry on my model. And I've moved to a brush. Here I'm using a dark tone just to add more depth, but then couldn't put the brush down. Started to add edge highlights with white. Once again defining those volumes a little bit, and feeling a little anxious that my figure looks kind of pants at this stage. Dan, on the other hand, going in with some brown now to make the leather look a little bit more defined. Kind of continuing with that careful application, using the brushes, the pens, kind of as they're supposed to be. There's actually black and grey on Dan's model, but it's a bit difficult to see the differentiation. Charlie calling it done just about at this point, but we didn't let him get away with that, and we encouraged him to add on some extra details, some metal there. And now here's me going in with blue over the top of the green. This is to try and add more kind of sense of depth. Once again, placing the little blobs quite selectively, nattering away, starting to feel a little bit more comfortable about things. And Dan's finally reached for some colour as well, snatching that blue off me and adding it onto the kind of shoulder pauldron bits. And then adding some metal on. You'll see here the pens are quite unforgiving. They don't really have much bend in the nib, so that little front barrier was getting quite buffeted about. Charlie, all done, or at least so he thinks, but nope, he's not. We're going to make him do more with the brush now. And then there's me, back to the brush, starting to add some rust effect here. Some of the Army Painter technical paints that came in the German historical set. And here, in my comfort zone, putting paint on real fast, much faster than I could with the markers, and this is kind of the way I enjoy to paint. Getting it on and maybe blending in. Dan adding some rust of his own, but he's using one of the Speedpaint Markers, just more brown over the coverage. And it looks quite good, honestly, for a beginner's kind of attempt. And here's Charlie putting his initials on. He's really loaded those bristles up. If I had noticed, I possibly would have advised that maybe he is a little more forgiving on that brush, but he's doing untold damage to that brush with its first use there. Some really bold spot highlights though, which I quite admire. I gotta appreciate that. And then Dan decided he would try and do some basing, flocking directly over the speed paint application and seeing if that would stick it, which seemed like a fool's errand, but we'll hear about that in the finale.
1 hour later.
Alright, we are back, and we stayed true to the speed paint name. We didn't take a long time. Somehow I'm the only one with paint all over my hands.
Tiny bit of paint.
How did we find it? Let's start with Charlie.
I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it in the sense that it reminds me of colouring in books from when I was 5, because I am not remotely good at painting at all, so I found it very enjoyable, but I can see how someone who's into the hobby would find it unintuitive.
Did you prefer this to using a brush and speed paints then?
I would say so, because I never really liked painting. I was always more of a just drawing and colouring kind of person, but yeah, I did enjoy it.
All right, Dan, how did you find your experience?
Well, the main thing was it was interesting, wasn't it? It was the first time we'd all used them, and although you're of a different level of painting ability than me and Charlie are, it was interesting, and like Charlie says, it did have that sort of colouring in book kind of quality about it. With my figure, I went for something that was less gearish and trying to get something that I could put on the tabletop and play with, really. I used black and I used grey, which to be honest, I'm struggling a bit to figure out which bits are painted black and which bits are painted grey, because they are starting to merge into each other. Then I put a few sort of brown patches, potentially rust on at the end, which have actually now, in front of my very eyes, they're becoming bolder, really, perhaps a bit less subtle than I thought. I didn't use a brush. I shunned the brush entirely, but I did do a bit of I did do a bit of flocking, look. So
Yeah,
you
flocked.
get bonus points for that.
You flocked onto the speed paint, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Is it holding up? No. So don't flock onto speed paint, use glue. I really struggled using these. I'm kind of relieved because every single Army Painter product that's come out recently I've thought is brilliant. These aren't for me. Maybe they're still good, but they're just not to my taste. I got down to adding brushwork quite quickly. I did do blue over green to kind of try and build in volumes and make it look a bit more painted, I guess. And interestingly, Dan did say it conveys my style a little bit, which I guess is a good thing. But yeah, there's quite a lot of brushwork on here as well. One thing I will say is good. We used these new Army Painter synthetic brushes, and they're actually really nice. Really good feel, nice variety of tip sizes and applications. So that's good. For me, I don't think I'll be going back to the Speedpaint Markers. They just felt slower and not as free. I love how speed paints can be blended really quick on the figure, and I don't think you can do that as easily with these. So yeah, overall, maybe better for a newcomer like Charlie.
So yeah, I think for people like us, and if you've got a friend, maybe you're a brush painter, but you're trying to get someone into colouring in their figures, which is effectively what it is, I think they could work pretty well.
Okay, and one other thing that's probably fair to say about the markers is these I think are quite tricky figures. They're quite complex. They've got lots of cavities that are difficult to get into and lots of detail. So we've definitely put them to the test, but overall, the markers not really for me. The brushes, I do like the new synthetic brushes. Dan?
Well, yeah, as a complete novice like me and Charlie are, we're not harking back to the brush thinking, oh, I wish I was using the brush every time. So we're using a pen and getting a different feel from it, which is that, yeah, it's doing a job, and it does do a job, and it can do it quite quickly as well. If you turn up at a tournament and you find, oh god, I'm 2 tiger tanks short, then quickly get your pens out and colour in a couple of tiger tanks, and you're up and running. I mean, they're definitely quite easy to transport in that little box, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure. And Charlie, you?
Yes, I have similar opinions to Dan. It does a job. It's I'm not fighting against muscle memory and many years of instinct of using a brush. So for me, it's just does the job, fills in the spots, you know.
If you do want to have a go at painting those figures yourself, then what you need is a copy of the latest issue of War Games Illustrated, the October 2025 issue, where you will either get those figures free or you'll get the American Fireflies instead. So yes, make sure you get hold of that so you can get hold of these.